Welcome to Watch Collecting. My name's Nick, and today we have a bunch of new arrivals to get through. And after our last Oddballs episode, I've gone with some classics this time around. Well, mostly classics. I've also saved something overlooked and undervalued until the end, so stick around for that. Let's get into it. Let's start with two big guns, two Daytonas, because these watches don't just show the evolution of the Daytona itself, they show how the entire watch industry has changed over the last 50 years. See, there was a time when Rolex wasn't obsessed with doing everything itself. Take a look at this 6263. It was produced between 1971 and 1988. And it represents the final chapter of the manual wind Daytona. But I feel like there's a lot more to unpack here because it comes from a completely different era of watchmaking. Before we all became obsessed with in-house movements and this kind of expectation that every component has to be made under one roof, Rolex, like many other brands, relied on specialist suppliers. That also meant design across brands was often far more homogeneous than we see in modern day, especially when it comes to chronographs. If you look at watches like the Omega Speedmaster, Hoya Carrera, even the Breitling Navi Timer from this period, the subdials all look remarkably similar. And that's because movement suppliers such as Valjoux and Lemania dictated the layout and spacing, while dial components and hand designs were often sourced from a relatively small network of manufacturers. During this period, watch design was shaped as much by available components as it was by the brand identity itself. So coming back to the Daytona 6263, from both a design and a mechanical standpoint, this really is the end of an era, with a complete rethink arriving when the reference 16520 launched back in 1988. I think that's one of the reasons why references like the 6263 and 6265 have become so desirable amongst collectors. Now, if you want to see how the Daytona's design has evolved, this is a great place to start. At the top of the Daytona family sits this guy, the reference 116506. This is Rolex's unofficial 50th anniversary celebration, and it's crafted entirely from platinum. Trust me, you know this is platinum the moment you pick it up. If you're the kind of person who appreciates a bit of heft on the wrist, this is definitely one for you. If we compare this directly to the 6263, it really highlights how much the Daytona design has evolved. Where the vintage example shares visual cues with other chronographs of the era, this has a look that's unmistakably Rolex. It's the glossy ceramic bezel, the ice blue dial, and those chestnut brown sub-register rings make this one of the most recognizable modern Daytonas ever produced. And of course, that ice blue dial remains exclusive to Rolex's platinum watches. Of course, beneath the dial on this watch sits the caliber 4130. This is Rolex's first in-house chronograph movement, and it powered their Daytona for more than 20 years. This is like peak modern Daytona, and one of the Crown's most successful modern designs. Right, moving over to Patek Philippe. And this might be one of the most important Pateks that you've never really thought about. The 5035 is the brand's first annual calendar. And from a historical perspective, it's one of the most important watches Patek produced in the modern era. See, the annual calendar complication might feel familiar today, and we've seen it rolled out on so many watches from different brands, but it debuted on this very reference. Developed and patented by Patek Philippe in 1996, it filled this gap between, say, a simple calendar and something far more complex like a perpetual calendar. And the timing of this watch, it makes a lot of sense. See, the watch industry was emerging from the quartz crisis in the 90s, and collectors were rediscovering an appreciation for mechanical complications. The annual calendar offered much of the convenience of a perpetual calendar without that kind of complexity or cost. And that's why it's such a clever complication. See, the watch automatically accounts for every month except February, requiring just one correction each year. For most owners, that's a pretty small trade-off for a movement that's both significantly simpler and more affordable than a perpetual calendar. And as far as the watch itself, I personally think the 5035 has aged really well. The 37mm case sits perfectly on the wrist. The Roman numerals are loomed, which I think is kind of an unexpected but appreciated detail, almost giving it a little bit of a sports watch feel. And the recessed day and month displays add a nice sense of depth to the dial. And finally, there's also a 24-hour indicator down at 6 o'clock. Turn it over and you can admire the caliber 315 SQA through the sapphire case back. In typical Patek style, it's got phenomenal levels of finishing, and we've got an 18-karat yellow gold winding rotor. This is a really special release from Patek, and I think it's one that deserves a little bit more attention. Right, moving on to something else from the Holy Trinity, but something with a completely different personality. So if you're going to build a watch called the Overseas, this is the complication that makes the most sense. This is a second generation Vacheron Constantin Overseas dual time. And personally, I think the dual time complication suits the Overseas and pretty much every other sports watch perfectly. Interestingly, this was the first dual time in the Overseas family, as the original generation never offered this complication. And despite the amount of information on display here, the dial still manages to feel remarkably balanced. You've got the second time zone, the day-night indicator, the date, and a large power reserve. Yet somehow it never feels cluttered or busy. I think that's achieved by having subtle color contrasts helping to separate those indications, whilst there's some guilloche on the dial which really comes alive as you move it across into the light. This generation is also significant because it introduced the half Maltese cross bracelet links that have since become a defining characteristic of the Overseas collection. And I think beyond the luxury finish, this is a genuinely capable sports watch. And you only have to handle this to realize that it's built tough. It's got 150 meters of water resistance, screw down crown, and a soft iron anti-magnetic protection inside, which covers the movement. It feels strong and robust. And I also think it's that kind of watch that you just feel like it could handle anything. But despite Vacheron's status and the quality of construction here, I still think the Overseas remains a little bit underappreciated. This generation in particular feels like a kind of sweet spot for the Overseas. It's like a modern sports watch, but it still has kind of character and that feeling of yesteryear, of that 2000s period. I think it's a special watch and definitely something that deserves your attention. Okay, now for the oddball on the table, something undervalued, and no, this is not a Lunga 1 copy. In fact, I think that this is one of the most misunderstood watches in German watchmaking. See, Glashutte Original is a seriously underrated brand in general. It's worth remembering that this watch comes from the town of Glashutte itself. It's a place of over 7,000 people where a quarter of the population works in the watch industry. That's some serious pedigree, and the same town also hosts brands like Lunga and Nomos and various other well-respected names. And I think it's one of those places where watchmaking is at the heart of the town and what people do there. The Pano collection has become one of the brand's signatures, taking this distinctly German approach to dial design with this off-center display and asymmetrical layout. And nowhere is that more obvious than this subline of the Pano. This is the PanoInverse. Rather than hiding the movement on the back of the watch, Glashutte Original has brought some of its most intricate components onto the front. The balance, which is the big standout here, sits proudly on the dial side, and it's framed by this hand-engraved bridge which runs over the balance. And I think it showcases the kind of finishing that German watchmaking, especially from Glashutte, is so famous for. This one is unusual, it's highly technical, and it's completely different to anything else from the watches we have on the table here. If you've overlooked Glashutte Original before, I think this might be the watch that changes your mind. It's something truly special, and I really want to give a plug to the brand and this watch in particular. All of these watches are live on the site right now, alongside a range of other pieces currently available for bidding. So jump onto the site to check them out now. And if you're considering selling a watch, don't forget that watch collecting offers 0% seller fees and gives you access to a global audience of over 50,000 collectors. We'll be back soon with the next episode of New Arrivals. So if you're enjoying this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so we can keep you informed when the next one drops.